This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish, in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Good evening, Harnwell here at the helm on Steve Bannon's War Room. Energetic scenes just now we're watching from Italy's parliament. The cheering side with the left and the socialists. The quiet, stony-faced side was the government. And as a lot of the press have been reporting in the last 24 hours, the government has taken a serious kicking in a key vote. This was to do with electoral reform. It's not, as some of the mainstream press were suggesting, the fact that Giorgia Meloni has lost a confidence vote, though that's the way the left are presenting it. But it is still substantially illustrative of the weakness winning through her governing coalition. And I say that because the reason the left won this vote, it was on electoral reform last night, the reason that they won this vote by one vote was due to around 20 to 25 MPs from the governing party who voted with the opposition. Nobody knows for sure who voted with the opposition, who from the government voted with the opposition, because being an electoral reform vote, this was conducted via secret ballot. So it wasn't a roll call vote where you just members will shout present or what have you. It wasn't a registered vote where each member, each deputy is formally identified with their position. This was absolute in secret. No transparency, no accountability. The arguing is for electoral votes on those things. Members, deputies, members of parliament need to be able to vote with according to their conscience and not be pushed about by party leadership. What is interesting, and this is what I'll be digging into now with my guest this evening, is why members of the government would have voted with the opposition on this vote and what they were seeking to achieve by doing so. So my guest back on the show, so soon after we had him last week, LUCA VOLONTè, one of the youngest members of parliament elected back in the day, 1996, for the Christian Democrats, leader of the Christian Democrat group in the lower chamber, the equivalent to the House of Representatives in Italy. Then, while still double-hatting as a member of parliament, he was the majority leader in the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly for the largest centre-right bloc, the Christian Democrat bloc, the European People's Party. This was some 15 years ago when politics was somewhat different and Christian Democrats still had some Christian values to them. Luca, thanks for coming back on the show so soon after your last visit. Later on in this show, we'll be updating the audience on some of the alarming news coming out of Hungary. But before we go to Hungary, let's discuss what's happening here this week in the Italian Parliament in Montecitorio. So, as I was saying in my introduction, the Western media is suggesting to somewhat, following, I think, the leader of the opposition, Eli Schlein's view that Giorgia Meloni has lost, or at least morally lost, a vote of confidence, which isn't true. Look, nobody, by the way, tunes in to the War Room to hear Ben Harnwell defending Giorgia Meloni. I don't do that. But I will give her, I think, some... I don't think everything that the government is saying on this vote can be dismissed out of hand, and some of what the opposition is saying is patently ridiculous. But we'll go through. We've got 20 minutes to do so. What happened then, Luca, in the Italian Parliament? Why is the Italian media, which is obviously left-leaning and very happy to sustain the left-wing narrative, so happy that the government lost this vote? And why did 20 to 25 members of the governing coalition secretly vote along with the opposition, and what were they hoping to achieve?
Three facts. Be very clear for our public. First is the merit of the amendment. The amendment of the electoral law was a provision to introduce preferences vote in the electoral ballot. So any citizen could choose his candidate and, fortunately, elect or not elect his candidate in the parliament. So a form to improve more liberty, more freedom in the hands of every citizen vote. That was the substance of the amendment.
Luca, let me just interrupt you on that one. Are you therefore broadly supportive of what the government was trying to achieve then with this electoral reform?
I'm very supportive because for two reasons. The first reason is that when one majority, any majority, any coalition could reach the limit of 43%, could have a bonus to govern with stability for all 5 years mandate. That is very important. Second, if this amendment will be positively approved in the Senate next week, it could introduce a new form of freedom for the citizen. The real power of every citizen during the election is the vote. When the vote is not only for the party, but also for the person, I give to the citizen a huge freedom to choose the best candidate and the best party or the best coalition. That was the meaning of the amendment. And I was very shocked for two reasons. The first reason for three reasons. The first is that the opposition coalition, they call themselves the future of progress in Italy, was so ridiculous after the vote. Seemed to be a circus in the parliament, in the institution. They show that they have not respect for the institution, not only for the majority of coalition or the government. Second, they reject the opposition coalition and also these 25-30 member of the coalition government. They reject this freedom to give this freedom to the citizens. This is the second point of that shocked very strongly, because when the question is to give freedom for the people, we should give the people the most is possible of freedom. And third, I'm not shocked, but I was concerned about these 30 people that vote against this freedom and this proposal of the party coalition in the majority coalition. Because, you know, especially when you vote electoral reform, you need that your member of the parliament should be very strong and very united around the proposal, especially after 6 months of discussion inside the coalition. You know, these people have decided to vote to join the opposition for only one reason: they are not sure to be re-elected. And that is very ridiculous, especially when we have a so strong government, and we hope to have a more strong government, including also the Nazi Party.
Let me just come back to this point then about the defectors, the secret defectors, the free shooters. Would be the I suppose a reasonable translation in Italian, the franchi tiratori, those secret members of the government who were voting with the opposition, those members of the government who were secretly voting with the opposition. You suggested in your answer that they were voting in the opposite direction of giving more freedom to the people. And that's one way of looking at it. Well, that's literally what they were voting for if you take the legislation, if you take the amendment on its own terms. There is another, of course, political consideration here, and that is they were trying to embarrass the Prime Minister. But obviously they don't want to do that publicly. But they were trying to either send a message to her or send a message to the public to suggest that she doesn't govern with the degree of control that she likes to think she does. There is something, however, I just want to go through for the benefit of our largely American audience, because this can be difficult to understand. Basic precepts of democracy in the Anglo-American sphere that really don't exist in continental Europe. In the UK or in America, we have constituencies where people will directly elect only one representative, and they're specifically tied to territories. In Italy, the proportional representation is basically list form. You have, according to the region, so many candidates depending on the size of the region. Could be 10, could be less, could be more. And the ranking of those, you vote via party, and the ranking is ordered by the party leadership. So that, you know, is horrific to the Anglo-American is this, the degree of control that the party has over who is the representative of the people. The de facto consequence of that is that elected representatives here on the continent are effectively representatives of their political party machinery to the people, rather than representatives of the people to government, to the legislature. What the opposition had been asking for many years was to give the people a greater degree of choice. And what the government had come up with was, they said, okay, we'll pick what's called the capolista, the first name at the top of the list, so that person will always get in. And what the government had tried to do, Luca, if I've understood this correctly, was to give to the people of the region the greater say in the ranking further down. After the capolista down, people would have a greater discretion over the ordering of the candidates. That would be much more similar to the election process for the European Parliament. And lo and behold, the opposition that had been calling for years for greater democratic representation in the picking of their candidates, when it got to a secret ballot, they voted this down. And Luca, my suspicion is they deliberately voted down a reform that would have created, it wouldn't have made the system perfect, but it would have made it a lot better than it is at the moment. And they voted that down to score some petty political points and to humiliate Giorgia Meloni. And as I say, anyone who watches me on the show, I will criticise her any day of the week because I think she's largely performative and hasn't been as effectual as a lot of people had hoped when they supported her 5 years ago. But on this issue, as in on the referendum earlier on this year, she was actually doing something, put a lot of political credibility and authority on the line. This is the second time she's lost a key vote this year. She put her credibility on the line to achieve something good. And it didn't work out for her. Lucas, stand by. Take your interpretation on what I've just said after this quick shout out, if I may, being that stage of the show to Birch Gold Group, sponsors of the show. You know the figures by now, folks, because I say them every time we mention Birch Gold. 10 years ago, the spot price of gold was $1,200 per ounce 10 years ago. It's now at $4,500, massive increase. And people are saying, because as I think as of the last two months or so, there's been a dip from $4,500 down to $4,000, $4,000. That puts gold at a historically competitive price right now. If you're thinking about long-term purchases, now would be the time to get in on the escalator. If you have perhaps a 401k and you're interested in turning that into a physical IRA in gold, then the best person in the war room can suggest to you to speak to pick up the phone and speak to and get his advice. You hear him on the show all the time. Very, very wise guys is Philip Patrick and his team at Birch Gold. Text Bannon, BANNON, to 989898 and just ask him about what's the technical procedure? How much do you need as a minimum to put down if you want to hedge against inflation? Philip Patrick, text Bannon, BANNON, to 989898 and just ask him for advice. That's what he's there for. You might decide you want to go forward. You might decide you want to buy a few ounces. You might decide it's not for you, but you'll be better informed and have a better idea of what your options are. Bannon, BANNON, to 989898. Make a note now. Call him after the show. All right, back with LUCA VOLONTè. So, LUCA, I was asking you why members of the government, and we know what the parliamentary arithmetic is. We know the opposition didn't have that many votes. So we know for a fact that members of the governing coalition, because there were three parties in the governing coalition, we know that some of them would have voted secretly, using the cover of secrecy to give Giorgia Meloni a slap. Where does the government go right now? Because the leader of the opposition, Eli Schlein, has said that the government, Giorgia Meloni, needs to resign as prime minister and there need to be fresh elections. So here's the thing: she's basically suggesting that the vote last night was some kind of no confidence vote. It wasn't a no. The opposition has perfect power to table no confidence votes and say this vote's going to be a no confidence vote. They just need to get the minimum, 20 MPs together and do that. Likewise, the government can say this is a confidence vote, and therefore, if they lose it, the government will tender its resignation to President Mattarella. Neither side did that. Probably, Luca, because neither side was quite knew how it was going to go, and neither wanted to give the ammunition to the other side. But my view on this is that if the opposition really thought that and you can see them there, absolutely delighted with that victory. My view is that if Eli Schlein really thought that the government no longer had a stable majority, she would table a no confidence measure over the next few days in the government. I don't think she will do that because she knows that the votes won't be there on a no confidence vote. So the people, the government, members of the government who crossed the floor and voted secretly, because it's all done by button, electronically. There aren't any voting lobbies there for these secret votes, so no one knows who they are. So my view is, if the opposition really thought the government was in jeopardy, they would table a no confidence vote, right?
Yeah, for sure. But they are very afraid to present a no confidence vote in the Chamber of the Deputy or the Senate because they are quite sure that could lose the vote. Unfortunately, also this afternoon, the amendment proposed by the group of Futuro Nazionale from Banacci, totally proportional, without saving the top in the list, the first in the list, was rejected, was voted in favor by Fratelli d'Italia group and part of the government, and rejected by the coalition, the opposition of socialists and liberals, plus Forza Italia and Lega Nord. And that could be a key to interpret from where the people voted with the left coalition yesterday against the amendment of the government that introduced for the first time the preferences in the list of electoral vote. So probably some people from Lega Nord and Forza Italia where yesterday the secret ballot have voted with the opposition, and today more clearly help the opposition to reject the proportional amendment tabled by the Banacci group.
So do you think there's any possibility that this amendment, because the government is going to press on with the electoral reform, do you think there's any possibility that in one way or another, perhaps via the Senate, they might actually get this electoral reform into law?
The president of the Senate today, just a few minutes ago, affirmed that he's ready to accept the same amendment, proportional amendment, with preferences in the Senate. So we will see what could happen. Probably also the vote of yesterday and today could accelerate a clarification, a political clarification inside the majority and among the leader of the majority parties. And we will see, we hope so. Not because we are a priori in favor of this coalition, but because we have we want to preserve the liberty as much as possible, freedom of the citizens during the their power of vote during the election.
Let me ask you this, because we've got about 3 minutes left. 2 questions I want to ask you in 3 minutes, okay? First question, okay. Do you agree that in Italy, in the Italian Parliament, as a former member of Parliament for some 20 years experience, do you agree that some votes should be, such as this, should be held on a secret vote basis? And the second question is, what conclusions do you draw by the fact that the Italian press and the international press almost universally spun the vote to suggest that Giorgia Meloni and her government are in trouble?
First answer, I'm totally agree about the secret ballot vote, but only for the conscience vote. An example, on abortion or on artificial procreation or euthanasia law, something that touch directly the conscience of any member of the parliament. I think that personally, this is my strong conviction that electoral law is not one of these cases of secret ballot vote. Second, I have only a confirmation that all the large part of the Western mass media including Italy, are governed by the same globalist left and liberal opinion makers and financial powers. They hate a conservative coalition or patriot coalition. We had a look some months ago in Hungary. We are watching the same situation here in Italy, and probably we will see the same if Farage will win the UK election or Bardella and Le Pen will win next year in France. They hate the conservative and patriots because they hate the Christian values and the identity of Christian nations.
So, first conclusion, going from the second part and then coming to the first part. The second part is that your conclusion, because of the media bias, is that they hate basically any conservative centre-right coalition. Basically anything that's not communist, they hate. Even the government, the actual government today in Italy, which is by no means perfect and not remotely far right. It's centre-right, if not just overtly centrist. Just the mere fact that it's called a right-wing government is enough to attract the media's unthinking blanket condemnation, even on something, on an issue that the left might have supposedly wanted to support, such as an issue of power to the people. Coming to the first part, I tell you what, we'll hold it on Luca till after the break. We'll finish this on Italy, and then we'll head over to find out just how the new government of Peter Magyar in Hungary is performing a purge of the Orbánites from the political establishment, including the very President of the Republic himself. Stand by, back in 2 minutes.
Still America's Voice family.
Are you on Getter yet? No?
What are you waiting for?
It's free.
It's uncensored, and it's where all the biggest voices in conservative media are speaking out.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
That's right. You can follow all of your favorites. Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec,
and so many more.
Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
Welcome back. Luca, I just want to finish this point because there's a lesson here. And that is, I think Americans need to understand that when they're talking about their European allies as being democracies, even the so-called advanced, established democracies in Europe are only barely democracies. Here's a good example of that. You're just talking now about how confidence votes work in the Italian parliament. And that is that the secret vote is given to issues of conscience. Okay? In the UK, conscience votes are where the political parties will give the members a free vote. They won't be whipped. They can vote however they want. Of course, the thing is, every vote in the House of Commons is recorded by member of Parliament, so you know exactly how each member voted, even on conscience votes. So it's I don't know what the technical procedure is for conscience votes in the US Congress, but that's how it is in the UK. Some votes, like on abortion, for example, you mentioned that will be a conscience vote, and the government and the opposition, they won't whip the members of Parliament. So you can vote how you want on this. But you always know, the public, the voting public, always gets to know how their representatives vote, so that they can then hold them to account. In Italy, conscience votes are secret. So it's the very opposite. They're given the room to vote without the party machinery being able to tell them what to do. But there's no accountability to the people. I'll give way because I know you want to say something on this, and then we'll move on to Hungary. But here's the point. Both in the Italian system and in Hungary, and this is why I say Americans need to know this about their European democratic allies, both the President of the Republic and in Italy and the President of the Republic in Hungary aren't elected by the people. They're elected effectively by the Parliament totally in Hungary, in Italy by the Parliament and with the representatives of the regions. But it's not a vote to the people, which is horrific. I think Americans would hear that and they'd be absolutely horrified. Just give me 30 seconds, a minute on your experience of 2-decade-long experience of serving in Parliament, and whether you think that is really the best way for an advanced, mature democracy to give members of Parliament conscience votes, to have them secret.
But I'm totally agree with you. The experience that you just talk about is the best experience, because I think especially for when a member of the Parliament is facing a very crucial argument where his conscience is particularly touched by the argument or by some proposal of law, he should show his character, and is the only way to show particularly and precisely in which values he believes. That's the reason, because I always, I never ask in my political career in the Italian Parliament, when I was chairman of the Christian Democratic Group, or in the Council of Europe, I never ask for having a secret ballot, because I'm very sure that anyone should present himself transparently with the electors, and also take his responsibility to say, I believe in these values, I could not vote this proposal of law. Also, if I'm risking to be not re-elected in the same party where I was elected before. Because if not, a member of the Parliament are only employed or simply employed of the chairman of the party without any responsibility. And in the end, also democracy is in this way is degrading and losing any appeal to the citizen to participate and to be represented by someone that has a strong character,
Luca, listening to you talking here and explaining this, it comes to my mind, and I make this point because there are people in the UK, and there are people, some people, less I think in the United States, that would like to move from the first past the post system to the proportional representation system. If you have a proportional representation system, which I don't support, this is the consequence of that. And the way that the conscience vote is handled, the way that a conscience vote is handled, is illustrative, I think, of the defects of proportional representation, which give effectively what under first past the post is the power of accountability to the people, takes it from the people and gives it to the party machinery. And this is a very clear distinction of how that works out, because in the Italian system, the conscience vote is dead secret. And this is what I realised as I was listening to you talk on this now, right? The vote is secret because the conscience vote in Italy is to give you, the member of Parliament, discretion to vote according to their conscience, free from the party machinery, right? That is how the conscience vote is. It's to give you the freedom to manoeuvre free from the party machinery that controls where you will be on the list at election time. Yeah. The conscience vote concept in the UK is that it frees the representative from the party machinery, allows them to vote according to their conscience, but always in a way that is accountable to the people before whom they have to respond. And that's a very important difference, right? And that, I think, is a fundamental point. And people, when you hear people agitating to move to proportional representation, it's really because the people are trying to curry favour with party machinery, party leadership, because they will be the primary beneficiaries of such a change. Luca, I'm going to ask you now, I'm just going to give a quick shout out once again to our show sponsor, then I'm going to ask you again, because I know you worked very closely when you're in the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly with the Hungarians. In fact, I know that you went over to support Viktor Orbán in his election campaign a couple of months ago. I know you have a very strong relationship with Fidesz. I'm going to ask you for your take now on the developments in Hungary from when we covered this. It went out earlier on this week. I'll be back to you in a moment, Luca. I mentioned the Birch Gold deal earlier on in the show. I'll give it out to you again. You really need to phone Philip Patrick, pick his brains right now, because gold is, as I say, it's fallen from $4,500 to $4,000 per ounce. Very advantageous rate to buy. If you buy gold, you normally buy to stay in according, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. But the long-term trend is up. So you buy gold, and the idea is that you just stay there for the long term because it will work its way up. That being the case, what people who want to buy gold long-term want to do is buy it when it's at a momentary dip. And that is exactly what the situation is right now. As I say, it's down from $4,500 down to $4,000 at the moment. So now is a perfect time to buy, to make a long-term investment. Speak to Philip Patrick. He's the expert on this. Also ask him about the book that he and Steve Bannon have produced, explaining over many chapters that Steve's been writing over the last couple of years exactly what the situation is. Text Bannon to 989898, especially if you're starting to get the FOMO shivers, the fear of missing out, and you want to get in on the next long-term price hike. All right, LUCA VOLONTè, let's go and discuss now in the final 10 minutes of the show what's been happening in Hungary this week. Earlier this week, the government led by Peter Magyar, I say Magyar, I think the Hungarians pronounce it Magyar, but it's written Magyar. Magyar is the English way of pronouncing the word. His government came in with massive support from the European Union behind the scenes. Some people were suggesting even that Ursula von der Leyen, via various funding streams, had found the way to put her thumb on the scale in favour of Peter Magyar, and he won big. Viktor Orbán had served 16 continuous years as Prime Minister, and I personally think he was tempting electoral gravity somewhat in going for I think it was a fifth term. But put that aside, Peter Magyar got a substantial majority, over 2/3 majority. I think he's got like 140 or so MPs out of 200. So he has a constitution-busting majority, and he's using it. So he's brought in a package, in a single amendment, a constitutional amendment. He's brought in this package limiting parliamentary terms to 3 consecutive terms, and it's backdated now, so anyone in Parliament who's already for whom this is the 3rd or more term, they will no longer be eligible to stand at the next election. He's reduced the retirement ages of judges down to 70. Now, you can argue about those things on their merits. I think there's an argument in favour of those things. The problem is that these things are being pushed right now, not so much to even a system, but because the government, for political reasons, is running a massive platform of de-Orbanification. I think it would be to coin the word, purging anyone in government that was put there by Viktor Orbán, including the President of the Republic, who was brought in 2024, I think, after Katerin Novak, great family hero, stood down. So he's and to add insult to injury on this constitutional amendment, LUCA VOLONTè, there is the effectively the removal of the president himself. Now, the president, after the vote this week in Parliament, which I think was 2 days ago, has 5 days to sign this constitutional amendment. The Constitution says he shall sign this into law. And if he doesn't, they're going to remove him. And if he does, they're going to remove him anyway, because they said effectively that he was too Orbán sympathetic. They haven't got any real high crimes or misdemeanors against him, but they've just said he was too sympathetic to Orbán, so they're going to remove him. Astonishing state of affairs. Luca, so my question to you is, because I know that you follow this and you write on this, what's happening quite a lot. I think you're finding this probably the most scandalous thing taking place in the European Union right now. Before I hand over the microphone to you, let me frame the question like this. Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Politburo chief, successfully withheld many billions of euros of funding to Viktor Orbán because they said of his politicization of the judiciary and the institutions in Hungary. Now that Peter Magyar is doing exactly the same thing and using the laws, by the way, that Viktor Orbán had passed in order to achieve those ends. Peter Magyar has not created everything he's doing right now is constitutional via the laws. I think it passed the basic law passed in 2010 and the constitutional amendment in 2013. It was all passed by Viktor Orbán. But when Viktor Orbán used these laws, he was anti-democratic and needed Hungary's voice suppressing in the European Union. When Peter Magyar does exactly the same thing, silence from Brussels. I don't understand how that works. It might have something to do with the fact that Peter Magyar is a lot more open to the migrants and a lot more open to Ukraine than Viktor Orbán. You're the expert. You tell me.
That's for sure. For Ukraine, because Peter Magyar leaves the objection for incrementing the discussion between European Union and Ukraine to include Ukraine in the European Union in the next 3, 4, 5 years. The veto was proposed by Orbán for the last 5 years. No discussion, real discussion was done about this inclusion of Ukraine in the European Union. That was the first price that Magyar paid to European Union to receive this 10 billion that he received in the coming days and was approved last week. But I'm totally agree with you. I'm shocking as you, like you, because this incredible silence that European Union has decided to where the European Union has decided to approach the so-called constitutional reform by Peter Magyar majority, that in fact are not only constitutional reform, are reform in the constitution to give the Peter Magyar government the power to erase any institutional power, independent institutional power in the Hungary, that because he wants control not only the executive power and the legislative power, but also the judicial power, because in the Amendment 17, there is also a rule to appoint a new president of the Constitutional Court on one hand, and in the other hand, the amendment to appoint a new, to oblige to resign the President of the Republic to appoint a new President of the Republic. But could be some problems, because in the case the President of Republic of Hungary, Sulyok, decide in the next 5 days not to sign the approval of the law, it's true that the parliament, the majority of the parliament could introduce the impeachment of the president, but the impeachment of the President of the Republic should refer the impeachment directly to the Constitutional Court. And this time the Constitutional Court is composed by the majority of the judges appointed by the previous parliament, not only the last 5 years parliament, but the last 15 years parliament. And probably the nowadays Constitutional Court could reject the impeachment. So it's not so easy for Magyar to push this coup d'etat. But these difficulties don't change the scandalous silence of the European Union, no?
Right, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If what Viktor Orbán was doing was undemocratic, then the European Union, if it's to have any coherence or consistency, has to say exactly the same thing. The problem is that the Magyar government is a lot more open to Brussels and Brussels diktats than Viktor Orbán. So we get to see just how lacking in all political principle the European Union actually is, even as it claims the moral authority to be an arbiter on these things. We see that it is absolutely, totally morally compromised. Now, just because I know we've got like 2 minutes left, I just want to say this. I've been looking into this quite a lot, like you have. And I don't think... I think if President Sulyok were to refer this to the Constitutional Court, I think the Constitutional Court, even though, as you were saying, has its own problems now because of the government, I think those would be questions. If it were able to block the amendment, it would be on procedural grounds. But looking at this, I actually think that Magyar has played his cards quite well. I don't see that what he's doing is being particularly unconstitutional. Where I don't agree with the government is that I don't think that they should be removing the president of the republic, which is simply an act of spite. It's pretty much exactly how the Democrats tried to impeach Donald Trump, because they said we've got the arithmetic, we've got the numbers in the House of Representatives to do this, so we'll do it. We'll decide what's a high crime and misdemeanor ourselves. And it seems to me that the Magyar government is doing exactly the same things what Nancy Pelosi did 10 years ago in America. My reservation, my problem is here with the European Union. That really made governing very difficult for Viktor Orbán, and they're just saying absolutely nothing when his successor is doing the same thing. Look, you are one of the world's experts on this. You've been in Parliament for 20 years, a great commentator on these things. Very, very quickly, where on social media, on X, do people go to keep up with your analysis?
Thank you very much, Ben. For sure, we hope that Orbán could resist.
I'll give it myself. You're on X. In fact, I don't have it. LUCA VOLONTè. There we go. Thanks to Will at Real America's Voice for holding the show together. Steve, back at 10 a.m.